Hi, I'm Jennifer Parks. I'm the COO of Asia for White & Case, the global law firm. I'm also the co-chair of the Women of Influence Committee with Anna Marie, and I'm welcoming you today. Thank you for coming. It's my pleasure right now to introduce our afternoon keynote, Deborah Kan. Deborah is a new media entrepreneur, media speaker, and award-winning news anchor and journalist. Previously executive producer at the Wall Street Journal, Kan launched the journal's video operation in Asia and grew it to a substantial operation spanning 9 countries throughout the region. During this time, she created and produced the global consumer technology show Digits and spearheaded the production of the several documentaries, including The City of Imagination, Kowloon Walled City, and What is Alibaba? Kan has interviewed many world leaders and CEOs during her tenure as a journalist. Uber founder Travis Kalanick and Twitter's former CEO Dick Costolo are among technology leaders that she has gained exclusive interviews with. When she interviewed the Google's executive chairman, Eric Schmidt, in 2014, she broke the story of Google's criticism of the U.S. National Security Agency. Throughout her career, she has conducted exclusive interviews also with political leaders. Some of these include, she was one of the few international journalists to interview the Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen. She was the only television journalist from Asia to accompany the New York Philharmonic in the historic 2008 performance in Pyongyang, North Korea. Other profile interviews include the U.S. Vice President Al Gore, former Pakistan Prime Minister Shaukat Aziz, and the former Philippine President Joseph Estrada. Kan is a member of the 2008 class of the Young Global Leaders of World Economic Forum. She obtained a BA from the University of California and attended the Mass Media Institute at Stanford University, where she studied broadcast journalism. She's currently launching a multimedia content site which focuses on health and technology. So please join me in welcoming Deborah Kan to the podium. Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone, and thank you so much to AmCham. I'm going to be really unconventional. I'll come back to the podium. I have this aversion to podiums. I feel like they're too formal. Thanks very much for the opportunity to speak at today's luncheon. I have to say I was very honored being amongst so many accomplished women to be asked to do so. So I was thinking about when the topic was the future in 2030, what I could possibly say about what opportunities, what problems, what solutions would be there. And I thought, let's take a look at what I have learned so far in my past 20 years. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I've seen that has changed, and just certain instances and influencers who have made a huge impact on me as a professional woman and how I make my decisions in the world. So, ironically and a bit strangely, I'm going to start with my biggest rejection in life. I'm starting out by telling you, and you'll see a slide there, it's KSBY TV in San Luis Obispo, which is a 5-hour drive south of San Francisco. I had gotten this coveted internship at KPIX, which was the CBS affiliate in San Francisco, and I was sure I was starting my career out on the right foot. I was filled with optimism. I got accepted to Stanford University's Mass Media Institute, and I thought, wow, things are really good, getting off on the right track. At Stanford, they taught us how to write, they taught us how to edit, they taught us how to shoot, they taught us how to interview. And I remember so clearly the interviewee telling us that 2 things: don't take no for an answer, and be persistent. Tell them why you're such a winner. Tell them why you're going to get hired for that job. So full of optimism, I got an interview at KSBY, went to Ann Taylor at the time and bought my new outfit, sat in the car. Whatever happened to Ann Taylor, actually? Sat in the car and drove for 5 hours rehearsing what I was going to say to this news director about why I was the perfect candidate for my first on-air reporting job. I got out of the car, I was shuttled into this conference room, which I still remember today. It was like cream-colored walls with a really tacky poster of California hanging. And I sat back, and the news director finally came in. I sat up, I introduced myself, and at that time, this dates me a little bit, we had resume tapes where we put our work on a tape and they would put it into a beta machine and watch it. He took the tape from my hand and he put it in the machine, and sitting there, straight up and upright, already planning where I was going to live in San Luis Obispo, because before that I drove around the neighborhood saying, hey, this is a pretty nice place. He looked at my tape for 1 minute, and he pushed eject. He took it out, and he held it up. And he looked at me square in the eyes, and he said, Deborah, there are those in this business who have it, and those who don't. I'm telling you, you don't have it. So I'm actually doing you a favor and telling you, get out of the business before you waste any time. So that was my entree into the world of television journalism. I get back into my car, and what happens? I cried, of course, floods of tears. Wouldn't stop. I was probably a hazard on the road, but I continued to drive, and then something wonderful happened to me. I got 2.5 hours north, and I pulled into a McDonald's parking lot, and I felt anger like I've never felt in my entire life. I think I was seeing red, and I felt so angry that anyone could possibly say to me, you cannot do it. So I promised myself that day I was going to prove him wrong. And to this very day, I thank him. I thank him because when there are times which they come up where someone says to me, Deborah, I don't think you can do this, I think of him, and I do it. So that was my entree. As the influencer, he was the first influencer in my career. Next slide, please. During my time as a journalist, I have wonderful opportunities to meet people who, in fact, influence my life considerably. This woman is Geraldine Cox. Some of you may know her and have met her because she's been through Hong Kong on many occasions. She founded Sunrise Children's Village, an orphanage, which she doesn't like to call an orphanage because it's a happy place, in Cambodia. Now, when I met Geraldine, she told me her story, and I was so awestruck by the braveness that this woman has shown in her life that I thought, you know what, Geraldine, you're going to become part of my life because I'm so inspired by you. Geraldine was working at the diplomatic mission for Australia located in Phnom Penh. She was there during the 1997 coup where Hun Sen seized power from Prince Ranarid. And everybody, all foreigners, were fleeing the country. They were being airlifted out. It was an incredibly dramatic scene because it was a bloody coup and people were dying on the streets. Geraldine knew from an early age she was not going to be able to have children. So she volunteered her time at an orphanage outside Phnom Penh. So while everyone was getting airlifted out of Cambodia, Geraldine said, I'm going to that orphanage. Who's taking care of the children? She went there and she found nobody was there. The children were all by themselves, huddled up, bunkered in this room with not a single adult there. So Geraldine, in her fashion, said, children, I'm here and I promise you I will never leave you. She not only said that, but she did something that most of us wouldn't do. In the middle of a bloody coup, she picked up the telephone and she called CNN, and she called Hun Sen every possible name that was arable, that wasn't a profanity, and to raise awareness and saying, this is what's happening, this is what's going on. I can't even imagine the braveness that took that day. And to talk about how life comes back to you in beautiful ways, Geraldine, her orphanage, Sunrise, outside of Phnom Penh, is in this beautiful property. It was part of the military, and years later, Hun Sen and she made amends, and he said, Geraldine, thank you so much for taking care of our children in such a broken society. In return, I'm going to build you a beautiful house at Sunrise, and you can have this land. So I thought it was a beautiful story, but when I think of the braveness that took, I'm so inspired by that. So influencer number 2. Meeting Geraldine led me to go to the Sunrise Children's Village in Cambodia, where I was lucky enough to meet T and Wow. And these beautiful girls really struck me because they have such beautiful smiles and they have such horrible scars on their face. But when you meet them in person, you just notice their smiles and you say, how could people like this smile? I said, Geraldine, what happened? And she told me the story, which were terribly tragic stories. One was T, who's on the left. She was sleeping on her mom's chest when a villager thought that the mom was having an affair with her husband. So she took a bucket of acid and poured it over the mom. T was fused to her mom's body and had to literally be cut away and survived, fortunately, but it really dissolved half her face. Wow, on the right, she was sold into a begging ring, and the begging master, they think, thought she was too beautiful, so he poured a bucket of acid over her face. Now, why I bring up these women is because it's a characteristic that I feel is essential today for and how we should be talking to our girls, and that is resilience. And anytime I feel like I'm going to give up or that life has just gotten too hard and I just need to go to the spa, I think of T and Wow, because I think if you can live a life like that and have such horrible things happen to you, but yet stand up and have the ability to smile and be happy, that's success in my mind. Okay, so oftentimes, and you heard in the introduction, I was lucky enough to go to Pyongyang, North Korea with the New York Philharmonic in 2008. I'm telling this story, you'll understand in a bit, but when I went to Pyongyang, it's exactly what you would think life is like in North Korea. It's gray, it's barren, the architecture is very Soviet-like. It's one of these places where it doesn't feel like it has a soul because you can't tell what the people are like. So when we landed in Pyongyang, we were all assigned a minder. And unfortunately, I got the strictest one because everywhere he took us, I'd kind of tiptoe away and try to find people who I could just observe and see, what are they doing? What are they thinking? Are they happy? But he kept calling me back and saying, Deborah, when we move in North Korea, we move in groups. We only move in groups. And I'd be like, yeah. Next stop, same thing over again. Then I met that evening 2 members of the Philharmonic, and I was telling them I feel exasperated in a lot of ways because I just want to figure out what people are thinking here. I just want to see people. I don't need to talk to them. I don't speak Korean, but I want to see them where I'm not surrounded by these minders. So off we went, and we agreed that we were going to try to go running. And if you know me, I'm kind of like an exercise fanatic right first thing in the morning. And so we said, let's just give it a go. We knew that the government really wanted to make a great impression on Americans. And we knew that we would probably maybe get in trouble, but probably not jail. So we said, 5:45 a.m., let's meet down in the lobby, and let's sneak off and go for a run. It's like, okay. For the first time in my life, my alarm didn't go off. And I wake up at about 6 in the morning and I think, oh no, and I threw on my running clothes and I ran downstairs. And I had this moment of, they were nowhere to be seen. And I think, should I? Shouldn't I? What would my mother say right now? And I decided, let's just go. So I started to jog. And what's interesting about North Korea is I happened to hit the morning commute. And they walk in one direction on one side of the street and the opposite on the other. So nobody crosses each other. It's very orderly. And the other thing that strikes you is it's very quiet. There's not anyone having the usual, commuter conversation, especially because most of them are on foot. So I start to run along the riverbank, and I'm trying to get someone to look at me, and no one will look at me. So then I decided I was going to be very bold, and I was going to turn around and run the opposite direction, and then they'd have to look at me. Well, I did that, and guess what? Nobody looked at me. They looked down, they looked out of the corner of their eye, but nobody made eye contact with me. So lo and behold, I get back to the hotel, and I think, phew, that was it. I got away with it, and okay, I got to see people, but I don't really know that much about them. And lo and behold, who's there at the door of the lobby of the hotel but my minder? He goes, Deborah, in a very stern voice, I need to talk to you now. And I think, okay, I'm going to jail. This is it. He leads me by the arm into a room in the hotel that's no bigger than a broom closet. And he says to me, so there's a table and 2 chairs, and I thought, this is interrogation. They're going to interrogate me about what I was doing, breaking the rules in North Korea. He sits down, we sit down at the table, and he leans over and he stares me straight in the eyes. And I said, yeah. He said, I need to ask you a question. And I said, okay, what is it? And he looked at me and he said, do you have any books? Books? Oh my goodness, books. I said, yes, I have books, but not here in North Korea because they told us not to bring them. Anyway, the story goes on from there. But why that was such, and I'll save that for another lunch, but why that was such a life-shattering moment was because I realized the power of growing up in a free society where you're free to read what you want. You're free to say what you want. And what an incredible amount of responsibility falls on you when you live in this free society. That responsibility is you have the freedom to change things, so do it. Don't waste any time, change. So those were the 4 or 5, I should say, counting T and WOW together, those were the 5 key influencers in my life that I still think about all the time today. They really made an impression on me, and I live by how they live, and they've had an enormous impact. So I look back in the last 20 years, and I think, what has changed? What have I seen? Well, roll back to 1994, and Kim Il-sung died, and the leader of North Korea, the former leader of North Korea, we couldn't get to Pyongyang at that time, so we flew to Seoul. And I'm not talking about the politics here, that was another thing, but we arrived in our hotel, and mind you, this is 1994. It's not that long ago, 20 years, but, not the dark ages. And me, the exercise fanatic, wake up in the morning at 5:30 a.m. at my hotel, which is probably about a 4 to 4.5 star hotel. Go to the gym and thinking I need a good workout before we're going to have this long day. And the man who was tending the gym goes like this. He said, no. And I said, oh, so sorry, not open. He said, no women. And I said, oh, I'm terribly sorry. Where's the women's gym? He said, no women's gym, no gym for women, men only. And I thought, wow, really? This is 1994, really? So anyway, I retreated upstairs. I wasn't gonna get arrested for that. And later that evening, we worked until 10 at night, and in Seoul, you had these restaurants. I don't remember what the name was in Korean, but it's almost like you're going into a woman's living room, and they cook amazing Korean food for you. But because it was past 10 o'clock, my translator kept saying, wait, Deborah, you have to wait outside. We have to see if it's okay for you to go in, because I was the only woman on the crew at that time. And I was like, really? Why? Does something weird go on inside? And no, it's just past 10 o'clock, you need to get permission. We went to about 4 different restaurants before they would let me in. The 5th did. Again, 1994. I guarantee you in Seoul today, that's not going on. But, that was in 1994, and that was Seoul, South Korea. Later, 1996 comes along, and that's me on the USS Independence. This was an extraordinary assignment. It was when the U.S. aircraft carrier was patrolling the Taiwan Strait. A lot of sable rattling between China and Taiwan. And The U.S. government took a press corps onto the Independence while it was in the Taiwan Strait. It was an awesome experience. They took us by the mail plane, and if you've never landed on an aircraft carrier before, it's like something you've never experienced because you just hit the deck, and a cable literally pulls the plane back, and it's almost like you're on some sort of amusement park ride. So we landed on the USS Independence, and it was a press corps, but only 2 women again. The rest were male reporters, and a handful of us, and we were given a 3-hour tour of the Independence. We were allowed to see the fighter planes landing and taking off and doing drills. And lo and behold, three hours later, they take us into the press room and they say, "We have some news for you." And we're like, "Okay, what's going on?" They said, "You're going to have to spend the night on the aircraft carrier. The mail plane broke down." And I was like, "Ooh, this sounds kind of fun, you know?" But at that time, this is 1996, there was not a single woman on the USS Independence. It was an entire male crew. So what happens? I have 5 fighter pilots guarding me 100% of the time. I can't tell you that I didn't enjoy that experience, but it was one of those things where it was a little bit surreal because at one time they took us through the mess hall where there was over 300 gentlemen eating. And myself and the other female reporter, we walk in because they were giving us a tour, and it was like you could hear a pin drop. These men had been at sea for over 3 months, and we were the first women that they were looking at. So I was thankful for the fighter pilots at that point in my life. But what's interesting is 4 or 5 years ago, I was invited back I think it was the USS George Bush, which was in town. And I took my family and I said, "You gotta come, it's awesome. Aircraft carriers are awesome sites." So we went and we were being given a tour by a woman crew member. And I said to her, "How many women are on board these days?" And she said, "On this ship, we have about a 1/3 women crew." And I was like, hallelujah, thank God, go women. And I'm sure today that number is even higher. And they were everything from fighter pilots down to engineers. So that was a really awesome sight for me to see. So as we're talking about, what has changed, that's the perspective I have from my job and some of the more significant changes I've seen. But what does the future hold? And that's what we've been talking a lot today in panel discussions. You can see some slides up there of my girls, because I think of 2030 as this is when my girls will pick up the baton and say, "I'm going to make a life for myself." What's it going to be like? I don't know what it's going to be like, but I will tell you, I love the fact that both of them have come home from school and said, "I've been a victim of sexism." And why do I love that? Because they're so aware of it. My little one, Gracie, who turned 9 not too long ago, last year she came home and she goes, "Mama, I was a victim of sexism." And I was like, "What happened, baby?" And she goes, "So-and-so," I'm not mentioning any names in case it's parents at this lunch, but "so-and-so told me that math Olympiads are only boys. They're not girls because the girls are terrible at math." I said, "Baby, let's sit down and let me tell you that KSBY story." So I told her, and I said, "Don't fight with him. Just show him. Get your girlfriends together, start a math club, and kick their butts." So I was happy to say that she's doing really well in math now, and so whatever motivates them, go, right? Another antidote to this story is someone asked Gracie, "What do your parents do?" And she's like, "Well, my mom has such an interesting job. She gets to talk on TV all the time. My poor dad, he just gets to talk on the phone." I loved that story, so sorry, Joe. So the women of the future, okay, another thing I've been doing recently is I've been going back and forth to California. I'm recently launching a new venture, as you heard. That is a slide taken from, I think it was August, and my husband and I really just wanted a cappuccino, but he was like, look around. It's like an Apple ad. What's going on here? It doesn't surprise me one bit. And one of the things I really like about California right now, and when you work there, nobody meets in their office. You kind of think they're hiding something like state secrets, because it's like, what happens to conference rooms? Why is it that every single meeting I have in California is in a cafe? Well, you know, I really like this because I think it decreases the expectation that we have to be in an office all day long. And I have been in offices where, truthfully, I'm not always productive in my office. You know, I need to get out there. And I think that work environment is actually really great for women and men to have more of a balanced life, because you're intent on figuring out what your schedule is without feeling like, oh, I have to, what are people gonna think if I'm out of the office from this time to this time? And that, I think, is changing a lot. And I'm not sure we're going to see it in Hong Kong yet, given that it's a financial center, but I'm hoping that things will start moving more and more that way. The other thing about the future, and I firmly believe this 100%, we tend to talk about the woman, chooses to stay home, but I actually think we shouldn't be talking about that topic, woman versus man, whose responsibility it is. The key to what has worked with our family is both my husband and I have very demanding jobs, but it's that equal expectation that we will step in should one of us need to. And I was just on a pretty long trip. I was in Zurich the week before last, and then I came home for 3 days and I had to go to San Francisco. And I told my husband, this is I don't like to be away that long, but it's gonna be a pretty long stint. And so he clears all non-essential travel. And we've done it like that as a tag team. And I think that really defines success and why things work, because it shouldn't be one person's obligation. I mean, whether we have a paying job or not, we all have our desires and our passions and our needs. And if you treat it like a tag team partnership, I think it really works, and it's essential to success today. So what's my wish list for the future? When Gracie, Jack, and Anna are the adults making the decisions, conducting their professional lives, what do I want for my children in 2013? I'm hopeful that we will stop having the conversation about the glass ceiling and women on boards, because it won't be an issue anymore. And I say that because I'm still astounded today. I just had an experience, one of my very, very close friends in the US, I hadn't seen her in a while, and we were having a catch-up, and she said, you know, she's a very high-level banking job. She has 4 kids. She's stuck with it. And, you know, I said, Sally, I'm so proud of you. You just are, you know, a force. And she said, well, yeah, Deb, but I'm thinking my next thing is I want to be on board. So I was thinking about approaching a bunch of NGOs. And no offense to NGOs, that's a great thing to do. But I said, Sally, with your experience, why wouldn't you be on the boards of major companies and major financial institutions? You'd be the perfect candidate. You have the experience. And she stopped and she paused and she goes, you know what, Deb? You're right. Why didn't I think that way? And I think part of the problem today can be that we limit ourselves, you know, go for it. I mean, I think, you know, if we can say, I'm worthy and I can do this, I think we're going to see a lot more results. The other thing for my wish list for the future is, and this one happens over and over again, I experience a lot of women in the professional environment apologizing for how good they are. It comes up over and over again, you know, and it starts when, you know, little girls on the playground, if they're too aggressive, they're scolded for it, and the boys who exhibit bullying behavior, they're just cool kids, you know? So I really hope that we can stop apologizing and just say, we're just damn good, full stop. So and the third thing on my wish list, and this is the thing that has probably carried me the farthest because I've been fortunate enough to have wonderful mentors my entire professional career, whether they be men or women. I've had people who really trusted me, who believed in me, and in turn, I really, really wanted to perform well. I think this is so critical for the success in a professional environment, just to stop, and if the person is just starting out, to look at them and say, thank you so much, or wow, that was a really good idea. The amount that you get back just from that recognition is immense, and it creates loyalty. And loyalty is something everyone should be thinking about when they're building a company or a brand where they need great employees. So kindness is really key to success and appreciation. So just to sum it up, what I've covered today are really the influencers and people who have helped me shape my views. I'm very grateful to them. I 100% believe that change begins within ourselves. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank Deborah for your entertaining and thought-provoking speech. And here's a present from our award sponsor, Mont Blanc.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good. Oh, sorry.